The Curses and the Covenants, A History Weaver Mystery, Book 2, by Connie Worden, read by the author. Chapter 36. Friday the 13th's dismissal bell did at last ring, leaving me to my own devices for the weekend. Or so I thought. I stopped by the counselling office to pick up my purse from my drawer and saw a note sitting on top of the desk. It was a scrap torn from a page of loose-leaf paper and was written in a scribbled handwriting I recognized as Larry's. "Can you meet me at the Minor Lake campground at 4 o'clock today, Friday?" it read. "I have something for you. It's in the boathouse. Larry." Intriguing. With everything going on in my life, I'd seen Larry seldom lately. Mostly just a smile in passing as we met in the hall or the staff room. The distance was my doing and intentional. Because of how he felt about me, or so I'd sensed, coupled with my reluctance to hurt him or deal directly with the situation, I'd been giving him a wide berth. But I had to admit that I missed his friendship. The note didn't seem to brook easy refusal. I supposed I could call him to tell him I couldn't meet him. But on the other hand, I could meet him. I had no real reason not to. And I was a curious little kiddie. I wanted to know what he had for me, and why he chose that meeting place to give it to me. Yes, I could meet him at 4 at the Minor Lake campground. The campground was between Cherryton and Penhurst, right by the nearest of a set of 2 lakes in the area, Major Lake and Minor Lake. November wasn't exactly campground season, but it looked like there was only one way to know what Larry had in mind. I stopped at the house just long enough to check on Ma and explain that I was on a mysterious errand to Minor Lake at Larry's request. When I pulled into Minor Lake Campground's day visitor parking, mine was the only car in sight. I was just on time, so I decided to wait in the car and give Larry a few minutes. After a few minutes of waiting, I wondered if he'd mentioned the boathouse so that I would go and look for the surprise on my own before he got there. I was getting impatient, so I set off to the boathouse by the long dock out into the lake. There were no boats kept docked there this time of year, it seemed. The place was deserted. The door had no lock, just a homemade rough wooden handle, and the door was slightly ajar, I was surprised to notice. But then there was probably nothing of value kept in it, except whatever it was Larry had in there for me. I swung the door inward, cautiously peering in before committing to stepping inside. I couldn't see anything obvious that would qualify as Larry's surprise. I'd have to go in and search if I were to find it. Could I possibly be trespassing if I went in? I wasn't sure. I decided to go in and just not get caught. I stood on an old yellow milk crate I turned upside down to run my hands along the top shelf, the contents of which I was too short to see. Where would Larry have left whatever it was? Suddenly the door slammed shut behind me, leaving the room in near darkness. There were no windows in the boathouse. The only light I had was seeping in under the wide crack between the threshold and the door. And the winter's day was already starting to get dark. When my eyes adjusted to the dimness, I picked my way to the door, skirting the piles of claptrap on the floor. The door's interior handle was the same as its exterior one, a rough homemade wooden one. I gave it a yank, expecting the door to open as easily as it had before. It gave slightly, but stopped almost immediately. What was jamming it? I felt around on the floor to see if there was something that had fallen down blocking the door's passage, but there was nothing I could feel. Surely it had been the wind that had shut the door on me. But if so, what could possibly be trapping me inside? Had it just jammed the way wooden doors will if they swell with moisture? I struggled with the door for a good 15 minutes before giving up and slumping onto the floor with my back against it. I sat there and thought it out for at least another 15. Where was Larry? I supposed I'd have to wait till he showed up to unstick the door and let me out. Then the dawning realization came over me that the door opened inward, And winds don't blow inside buildings with no windows. A strong wind may have burst the door open, but it couldn't have reached inside the open doorway to pull a door closed. A knot of fear tangled itself into a tight ball inside my stomach. I'd been locked in. On purpose. In the next instant, I was more furious than fearful. Hadn't I had enough lately? If this was a joke, it was a very unfunny one. "Hey, let me out! I mean it! It's not funny!" I yelled as loudly as I could, banging on the door until my fists hurt. Then I started kicking at it. It was mostly out of temper, but then I wondered if I'd be able to kick it off its hinges. Hinges. The door had swung inward. That meant the hinges were on the inside. If I could find some kind of tool hanging around inside the shed, maybe I'd be able to get the hinges off and escape that way. How did one do that trick? I envisioned some kind of chisel-type tool, maybe a screwdriver, and a hammer. I pictured placing the tip of the screwdriver under the pin top of the hinge and hammering the butt of the screwdriver to lift the pin up and out. That could work. On a mission to find tools, I was startled when a stream of fading daylight filled the doorway. Turning, it took me a second for my brain to interpret my eyes' input. But when it did, I recognized Larry in the doorway. It took another long second to spot that he had a knife in one hand and a short length of rope in the other. It seemed more like half a minute before I was able to act on the information my eyes were giving me. Fear returned full force. Larry! Of all people, I never would have seen Larry as any kind of threat. But that was the very clear message my eyes, as filtered through my brain, were sending me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and charged for the open doorway, knocking him backwards as I burst out of it. "Angie, wait!" he shouted after me. But I was as far away from the boathouse as my shaky legs would carry me, halfway to the parking lot and the safety of my car. Larry? I still couldn't make any sense of it. I hadn't counted on his being so much faster than me. With Larry flat on the ground when I'd last seen him, I thought I could make it to the car with my head start. I could hear footsteps pounding behind me and heavy breathing, but I was still sure I would make it. I was still precious feet away from my car when I felt a grip like steel around my wrist. I screamed again and struggled with all my might, turning and kicking at his shins or anything else that was within reach of my heavy boots. "Angie, stop! I'm sorry I scared you. Look, no knife, no rope." He chucked the offending items as far from him as he could throw them. "Please stop and let me explain. I can't let you leave thinking I'm some kind of serial killer." "Well, what's going on then?" I said, starting to sob, barely getting the words out with my uncooperative voice. "Why did you lock me in the boathouse?" Instinctively, it seemed, Larry wrapped his arms around me to comfort me, my face buried in his chest. His plaid wool jacket smelled like fresh-cut wood, and I could feel the grit of sawdust on my cheek. I didn't lock you in the boathouse." "Well, then who did?" "I don't know. When I got here, I saw your car close to the boathouse, so I went looking for you. Then I heard yelling and pounding coming from the boathouse. The door was tied shut with a piece of rope, so I went back to my car to get a knife to cut it, because that would be faster than trying to wrestle with the knot. That's the only reason I was holding a knife and a rope when you first saw me, but I could see why it freaked you out." "Of course it freaked me out. I'd just been trapped in the boathouse. If it wasn't you, why did you bring me here?" A little anticlimactic now. "You said you had something for me." "Yeah. If you want to wait, it'll take a little while to set up. I don't know if you just feel like leaving after all that, though." I hesitated. I didn't want to ruin his surprise, but I wasn't sure I could trust Larry. "If it wasn't you, who else could it have been? It couldn't have been accidental. Who else could have known I was here?" I asked out loud, but not really to Larry. "Whoever saw the note I left on your desk." I dug it out of my jacket pocket where I'd tucked it to give it another look. "Can I see it for a second?" he asked and took it from my hand. "Can you meet me at the Minor Lake campground at 4 o'clock today, Friday? I have something for you. It's in the boathouse. Larry." I read again silently over his shoulder. "Somebody altered it." He sounded very sure. Where? What do you mean?
Look,
he pointed.
See how the handwriting changes right there? That's not my handwriting. You can tell someone was trying to make it look like mine, but it's not mine. I didn't write that bit.
With one finger, he underlined the sentence that said, "It's in the boathouse."
See how it's different? And it's crammed in between the last sentence I wrote and my name. See? It doesn't quite fit.
I nodded. Now that I looked closely, I could see the difference in handwriting and how it was squeezed in unnaturally.
And I wrote 5 o'clock, not 4 o'clock. Look at that. You can just see the 5 under the 4. It's been erased and 4 o'clock written over it. Someone wanted you to come an hour early before I got here. Some opportunist saw the note on your desk and decided to try set me up as the bad guy,
Larry said disgustedly.
Someone seems to be targeting you, and me too, I guess, if they're trying to involve me in the role of villain.
He handed the note back to me.
You should probably take this to the police, he advised.
Do you think it has anything to do with Julia? With her case, I mean? I asked. Larry considered the idea.
It does seem too much to be coincidence. I don't know, though. What reason would anyone have for going after you like that?
Did you see anyone else when you got here? I asked him.
No. Whoever it was must have tied you in and then taken off. They weren't going to hang around and wait for me to show up.
I guess not.
So, what do you think, Angie? Do you feel like staying for a while, or do you just want to leave?
Well, what was the surprise? He looked sheepish.
To tell you the truth, it was more for my sake than a surprise for you. It's my birthday today.
Oh, shoot. Happy birthday. I'm sorry I ruined it. I mean, it wasn't my fault, but I'm sorry anyway.
I packed a little picnic, sort of. My aunt and uncle own the campground. They have a little cabin on site that I thought would be a great place for me to celebrate. And I couldn't think of anyone else I wanted to celebrate with other than you, he said, looking down at me significantly.
I could feel myself reddening. I don't want to disrupt your plans any more than I have already. After examining the note, I was as puzzled as ever, but I was also certain Larry was telling the truth. I didn't suspect him of bad intentions toward me any longer.
Okay then, wait in your car while I get things ready. We can pretend it's still a surprise.
All right, I'll wait with my eyes closed. Call me when you're ready. When Larry led me to the one-room campground manager's cabin, he had a fire started in the fireplace and food laid out on the little table. The cabin was rough but cozy with a few sparse pieces of furniture. There was a bed with its head against the far wall and across from it a small kitchen table and 2 chairs. It had everything needed for a kitchen along the south wall, complete with sink, fridge, stove, a few top shelves holding plates, bowls, and cups, and a sideboard that doubled as lower cabinets and cooking space. The back wall was taken up with a stone fireplace and 2 stuffed chairs alongside it. This is charming, I approved, giving it the once-over.
Thank you. I managed the campground one summer for my aunt and uncle and got to live in the cabin. Besides, lots of time spent visiting my aunt and uncle here when I was a kid. Still feels a little like home. Lots of good memories.
What birthday is it? I questioned.
34.
Larry was just a few months older than I was then. I'd be 34 in spring. To 34, I said, raising the glass of wine to him he'd just poured for me. He'd gone to all the trouble of setting the table with a red and white checkered tablecloth. Spaghetti was boiling in a pot on the stove while the sauce and the meatballs he'd brought in a container heated beside it. There was garlic toast on the table ready to be cut, and a bakery cake for dessert. He'd rescued the knife from where he'd thrown it, and it was sitting on the table ready to be useful in cutting the bread and the cake. I guess that explained why he had a kitchen knife in his car. A regular Italian restaurant, I commented.
Yup, that was the idea.
Reminds me of that movie.
Lady and the Tramp?
He asked. I laughed. Not what I was thinking, but sure, close enough. I can't remember the name of the one I was thinking of anyway. He didn't reply, but looked at me sideways, his eyes letting me know what he was feeling. Maybe it was just the leftover adrenaline from being locked in the boathouse and Larry's coming to my rescue, but I'd never seen him in this light before. I could feel my heart rate quicken. He picked up a guitar he had leaning against the bed. He sank into one of the easy chairs and started to play. I hadn't heard him play seriously before. His finger-picking was impressive. "New song," he announced, and started to sing in a rich baritone. He really did have a beautiful voice, I decided. It was a mellow song, almost folksy, about the beginning stages of a new love and all its accompanying uncertainty and anxiety. Good song. I had to admire his level of talent. He kept his gaze on me the entire time he sang. I also had to admire his guts. Not many musicians, or men generally, would have been so bold when they didn't know how the lady felt in return. Which I didn't think Larry could have known, as I didn't know myself just in that moment. "Did you write that?" I asked. "Yup." He didn't say anything else about it, just looked down at his guitar as he strummed a few chords and then leaned the guitar against the bed. He didn't say he'd written it for me, but I couldn't help picking up on that message. "Well, that was your before-dinner entertainment, one part of the surprise. Now if my cooking turns out, that will be a bigger surprise," he wisecracked. I laughed and went to check the noodles. "Looks like everything's ready," I said, pulling out a noodle and slurping it up. Perfect.